The meeting of the Monte Sereno City Council for March 19th will come to order. Please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Elahi?
Yes.
Councilmember Lawler? Present. Councilmember Luthold?
Present.
And Mayor Turner.
Present.
Thank you.
Terry, are there any changes to the orders of the day?
No changes.
The first order of business is oral communications. Andrea, do we have any blue cards?
I don't have any.
Is it possible just to walk up?
I'm Sylvia Moore, 15305 Elm Park, Monte Sereno. If you communicate something informative only and present it in an official or private capacity, there's no problem. But if you include something which can be interpreted as persuasive to the community or fellow council members, you're at risk of making an unforced error. The body of a recent post on Nextdoor was informative, but the headline, "Preserve the Unique Character of Monte Sereno, Stop the Loss of Local Zoning Control," could be interpreted as an effort to persuade, especially because it was related to an agenda item which recurs and has recurred contentiously over the course of many years. Monte Serenans and councils have been divided on this for years. Council members vote on the housing element. They should not be seen as lobbying for a certain outcome on any issue. None of you are now viewed as a private resident. Had the heading read something neutral, perhaps something like "Important Housing Element Meeting in Palo Alto, come in and see what's going on," your efforts would have been less likely to be misconstrued as some of my neighbors thought. In the case of the recent posting, a disclaimer didn't work, at least for some of my neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Are there any more?
No, I have no cards.
Okay, so we will now move to written communications, and we have none. The next order of business is consent calendar. We have 6 items on the consent calendar. Does anyone on the council wish to speak on any of these items?
You're going to pull the warrant list?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
And also the annual financial report, I just have one
I'm
comment.
sorry?
The annual financial report, I just have one comment or question on that. So we can
Okay.
pull 1 and 2 and 5, I guess.
Okay, so I will go ahead and pull the warrant list, and there's a $30 charge that I incurred for training in Sacramento.
And I have a $80.59 charge for the same thing, the mayor's conference in Sacramento. That's on there.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. The next order of business is the public hearings. Do I have to
need to
get a
vote.
motion?
Yes, and I think there was a question about item number 5
The-
as well.
The annual financial report, if you go to page 7, you may not be able to answer it, but maybe I can get a response later on.
We actually have the gentleman who helped prepare and oversee the report with us tonight. So if you have any questions, could you just introduce yourself, please?
Yes. Good evening. My name is Ahmad Goraibe. We are the independent auditors of the city, and I'm the partner in charge of the audit.
Thank you for coming. Yeah, I just had a question on page 7. It has to do with the expenses under general government expenses. They went from $2,075,000 in 2017 to $2,600,000. And my understanding is it had something to do with the pension, increase in pension liability. Could you explain that a little bit more?
Yes. So the city contributed to, I believe, CalPERS around 2017. don't want to go too much into detail in that, but the way that the accounting standards work is that they allow you to run that expense in 2018 as opposed to 2017. It's just the way that the accounting standards work, and hence the reason for that flux. So while the payment was made in 2017 fiscal year, the expense ran through the income statement that you see in there in 2018, and that's the reason behind that change. So in reality, there is no actual change in the operating expenses of the city. It's just that one-time CalPERS payment that was made in 2017 that caused that flux.
But why is it just one time? I mean, wouldn't that be done every year?
No, I think the city had decided to do...
It was for what's referred to as the unfunded liability.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the
Sure.
CalPERS? Yes, it was right before I arrived, I think, that the council had decided to pay off the current balance, and that's why that appeared.
That's an unfunded liability that we paid off.
Right, and at the time, it brought our unfunded liability to zero.
So this will not happen this year then, I guess.
It's not a recurring
That's correct.
expense, it's a one-time expense. That's correct.
The other thing I was going to ask you is that that's a big number. That's the biggest expense number we have. It's like $2 million in any case. Can we break that more, a little bit more? Just having one subheading, general government, probably doesn't do it. I mean, we'd like to get a little bit more detail as exactly what the big expense items are under that one heading.
Yes, absolutely. We can definitely itemize that furthermore. Yeah. Maybe put it in a note to the financial statements. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you can provide that for this one also next time, that's
Sure.
fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Anything else?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's move to item 7.
Did they vote?
I need for the consent
You
calendar.
need to vote on the consent calendar.
Do a motion.
To have a voting screen?
You should get the voting screen from.
You have it? No. It's not. It's not working for the motion screen. You do have a motion screen? I have a motion screen. Okay.
I have none.
Well, do I have a motion? I have a council member, Lawler has made a motion. Do I have a second?
Second?
You cannot vote either. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have the screen.
Oh, that's right.
Oh,
No.
Yeah.
It's done.
Okay.
It's coming up now.
Somebody seconded it, looks like.
Takes a second. Our connection, unfortunately, it's been very slow today.
Should be able to vote. So I have 3 votes in. Councilmember Elahi has voted yes. Councilmember Lawler has voted yes. Councilmember Luthold, yes. Mayor Turner?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so it passes 4-0. To your public hearings.
Okay, so now we can go to the next order of business, which is public hearing of the site development permit and grading use permit, SS 19-01. Let me go through the public hearing procedure, some procedural items before I open it up to the public. The first is Jeannie Hamilton from our planning department will present a briefing on this item. Then the council will be given the opportunity to ask questions and get staff to respond. Then I will open it up to the public, and they're limited to 5 minutes on this item. And then the council may request or ask to clarify any questions for the speakers after we hear all the speakers. And then I'll close the public hearing. No further comments will be accepted from the audience. We will take it back to the council where we will discuss it and then take a motion. So, Jeannie?
Thank you, Mayor Turner and council members. It's my pleasure to be before you this morning, and this evening. And I realize this may be the first time for a few of you hearing a project like this. Hopefully my staff report was clear and thorough to help you understand the specifics about the project. What is before you this evening is a site development permit inclusive of some tree removals, as well as a grading use permit. And the reason both are coming before you this evening is that per our Muni Code, the council is the decision-making body on the grading use permit. And if there are other permits associated with that that are under the purview of the Site and Architectural Commission, that commission then becomes the recommending body to you, the council, and it's all processed through a unified process. So, as I presented in the staff report, this is a proposal to demolish an existing 59-year-old single-story residence on Constitution Avenue and construction of a new single-story home, as well as a detached garage. There you will see on the proposal plans an accessory dwelling unit that is not up for discretionary review because those just go straight through a building permit. But the structural coverage and everything is looked at as part of the larger project to ensure that they can actually accomplish everything that they want to do. The grading use permit is predominantly here because in front of you because they're cutting and filling more than 1,000 cubic yards. If you've been out to the site, there's a gentle slope upward, and then once you get probably the last quarter of the site, a more steeply sloped. So to really make use of the rear yard area for pool and entertainment and, creating some flat areas, they've graded it and used retaining walls. There is one error that I would like to point out in the staff report on page 4. I included what was intended as an illustrative picture of the rear yard for the concrete retaining walls. Up on the screen are true renderings of the proposed rear yard from either side, as well as here's more of a bird's eye view so you can see where they're grading and terracing to create a more usable rear yard area. The design of the home is kind of a contemporary, modern. It's uses some hip roofs and the probably more of a ranch style look to the front, which relates more to the streetscape, and the modern lines are to the rear of the home. The materials they used are a little more modern in nature, cedar siding. There's a materials board there if you wanted to take a look. They are removing a number of trees. A lot of them, the predominance of them are some older fruit trees. There's a couple olive trees that they're looking to relocate, but the majority of the mature oak trees around the perimeter of the site are going to be retained and continue to provide that nice buffer between the existing lots. From the Site and Architectural Committee's viewpoint, they felt that this proposal was very much in line with the city's design guidelines. It fit well within the neighborhood, which is a mix of styles. They've set the home far back on the lot, and the setbacks are more than what the minimum is required. So the home is pretty centralized. I have heard from a couple of the neighbors. I also passed out an email from another neighbor. All of them are very supportive of the proposal, and I have yet to hear anything negative about it. I did cover in the staff report the typical findings that you're going to need to make and why we're able to make them, which is why you're seeing a recommendation of, we recommend approval of both the site development permit inclusive of the tree removals as well as the grading use permit. The attached resolution includes a little more detail, all of those findings. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Any questions from the council?
Yeah, I don't have any questions. I just want to put on the record, I did meet with Patrick earlier this week, and he kind of went over the project with me a little bit. And I drove by before I was coming down here. I saw one of the trees, I don't know if it's on their lot or somebody else, that was kind of falling down already. There's apparently a bunch of dead trees out there also that are going to be removed as part of the project.
Are you done?
Thank you.
Councilmember Lupo?
Just a quick question. I just was wondering, are any of the elevations there 2 stories, or is it all, it looks 1 story from the front. Is there anything in the back that's 2 stories?
It's all single story.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thanks.
Okay.
One other comment, if you don't mind. I think last week the architect spoke and he talked about a 15-foot ceiling versus a 12-foot ceiling. Is anything happening with the ceilings on these? Because I know we have a limitation of 12 feet or something.
Currently, it's designed with the 12-foot, so, staff will be, per the direction of council, will be working on drafting some proposed amendments. We will take those before Site and Architecture first before coming back to council. So if that does get changed, there's an opportunity for these to get modified as long as no exterior alterations, and they just do it through the building permit process.
So would that have to come back to us again if
No.
it's modified? All right.
No.
Thanks.
Only if there were exterior alterations, but the ceiling heights would only result in interior, so it wouldn't affect the overall design.
Anybody else? Okay, I do have a comment. I just wanted to let you know that I spent an hour this Saturday with Mr. Mockler, and we looked at the significant trees, the almost dead trees, and the dead trees. And I thought that it was very much in line with actually saving the significant trees. Anybody else? Okay, so let me now open it up for a public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Gary Colsat. I'm the architect of the project, and I'm representing Patrick and Vanessa Moakler on this site and architecture application as well as grading. I would like to know if everybody made it out to the property and they were able to walk it and understand where the story poles were and what they meant. I hope so. I'm happy to answer any questions as we go along. And I also want to send out some major appreciations to Jeannie working with us all along on this project from day one before they even purchased the property. She gave us very good advice, and that has, I think, helped us develop a very good, sound project. Her staff report as well is very good, covered quite a bit. I think it's going to save me some breath. And I also appreciate making the correction of that photograph, which was meant to just show what board-formed concrete retaining walls appear like. It's one of the retaining wall options that we're looking at. It's more of a modern idea. I want to just talk about overall the grading, but some of the reasons why we're asking for an excess of 1,000 cubic yards of grading. We wanted to locate the house farther away from the street and more pretty much how it is now. Actually, we're moving it up forward a little bit, but we wanted to create a big parking area in front, to get people off the street. There is an elevation difference from the street to the house, and so they wanted their guests to be able to enter the house without going up a dramatic amount of elevation change. And they also really liked the idea of setting the house back as it related to the other houses on the street. So that being said, we're pushed into the back of the property a little bit more than you might think. So, which trying to create this backyard experience for the Moklers with a swimming pool, patios, outdoor kitchen. It necessitated us to cut into the hill. We've done so in a terracing manner. So none of the retaining walls were higher than 4 feet, I believe, at the most, and an exposed wall. And I also wanted to mention that this amount of grading that we're asking for is certainly not out of the norm, at least for this particular location. The property to the east of us has quite a bit of grading, and they've got the retaining walls that are very visible. Obviously, we're not trying to do that at all. Just pointing out that this, we're not asking for any special exceptions in my mind. The property behind us several years ago had both the guest house property and the main house property were in front of city council for grading exceptions of several thousand cubic yards. As far as the grading quantities go, every time you excavate, you're cutting, and if you're filling, that same cut is, if you fill it, it counts towards the overall max, your overall grading numbers. So if I cut 500 yards and fill 500 yards, I'm grading 1,000 cubic yards. So we were being careful to keep the overall number down, and thus we minimized how much fill we had on the property. We have an opportunity to do about 200 to 300 cubic yards of fill on the front right corner where the old driveway is, that we could fill into that area without the use of retaining walls. If we employed retaining walls, we could probably take a little more dirt, but we don't want to have a bunch of walls in the front of the property. We have that one wall that is holding up part of the parking area, and we think we can landscape that away. But we really don't want to create this big walled effect. So we are really happy, and we would love to work, if you're okay with this, to work with staff to minimize the off-haul of our spoils, and putting it on there, but just with the understanding that our overall grading number is going to increase from what we're asking tonight. So that's an option. We also have an adjacent neighbor that we could take a fence down and give him we can give him 100 yards, I believe, without asking for a grading permit. Is it 100 yards?
50.
Is it 50 yards? So that's not very much.
But that's just a grading permit. It's not
That's for a
use
grading,
permit. Yeah.
without a grading permit.
Yeah.
So he's not really sure he wants to go through the whole grading permit process. So we might just be able to give him 50, and we can put a couple hundred on our property. What it does is it saves road use. It saves off haul and the trucking through the neighborhood. That's really the biggest concern I think that anybody would have as far as the grading goes, because I think that the way we treated it's very skillful. We had a great landscape architect who has helped us with the whole landscape plan, and I think that you'll find that also the trees are appropriate. As pointed out in the staff report, we're really only taking down 2 oak trees. The rest are a lot of fruit trees and olive trees, and a eucalyptus. I think, and I just wanted to point out at the end that I think the architecture is a nice complement to the street and to the whole city as in general, because it is moving in a more modern manner without being ultra modern. We don't want to be like the guy on Fruitvale, the big white house that kind of sticks out. But we also want to have some of that modern flair to the house. It's more on the rear of the property than in the front of the property. The front's a little more reflective of a California ranch, a modern ranch, and then the back has more of the flat roofs and the large expanses of glass. So with that being said, I think I've concluded my presentation, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions?
I just have a couple of comments. You're kind of taking a lead on getting Monte Sereno to change some of its requirements, like on the ceiling, I think you mentioned last time, go from 12 to 15.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any thoughts on whether the grading requirements need to be changed? It comes to the city council if it's over 1,000 feet, basically. If it's more than 1,000 square or cubic feet, that's
1,000 square feet or greater requires a
cubic
grading
yards.
permit.
Cubic yards.
Yeah,
cubic yards, more than 1,000 cubic yards. Should that be in proportion to the size of the lot that's being graded? I mean, if you have a small lot, 1,000 cubic yards might make sense. If you have a bigger lot, it may not make sense. Should we consider some proportionality on that, or should we just have a hard limit on 1,000 yard? And also, you said if the fill is also counted as part of the grading, should there be a different requirement on how much is the fill and how much is actually the cut?
That's an interesting question, because let's say you cut 900 cubic yards, and you could fill, some of that up, right? But it would take you over 1,000, and most of my clients would prefer not to go to the city council. Not that we're concerned about, it's just adding another step and another layer that if people can avoid it, they generally do. That's just human nature, I believe. But I've always found that Monte Sereno has been very fair. I think that maybe the way that grading quantities are calculated as a whole could be looked at. Maybe it's 50% of if you're balancing the cut and the fill, and that puts you over 1,000 yards, maybe. But so it's not really anything that's on our bucket list.
So I'll
I
give you
guess.
staff's opinion on that.
Sure, please.
In my 2.5 years here, this is the first grading use permit I've processed. I think the city's guidelines related to preservation of, especially in the hillsides, I think the fact that we don't see a lot of grading use permits is reflective of people respecting grading, especially in the hillsides. This is, again, is a unique lot. I think the last time a grading use permit came before the council was in 2016 on Lexington, again. And so, you don't see a lot of them, so I'm not feeling the need to really look into it, quite honestly. So we might just want to leave sleeping dogs lay until it really, raises its head.
I appreciate the comment. I just wanted, because you've done 2.5 years, I've done 2.5 months, so I have a different viewpoint on these.
I would say, though, that the city of Saratoga treats the grading and zoning differently. So if you're in an R140, 40,000, for example, which is R144 here, you can do 2,000-3,000 cubic yards of grading without having to go to the city council. In the hillsides, you're limited to 1,000 yards before you go step up beyond the planning commission to the city council. So they've made that distinction, hillside versus, quote, flat land, and maybe it's under a certain percentage, because when you grade on a hillside, it's obviously much more sensitive and you have more issues. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Interesting.
I have a question. How long would grading at this extent take, typically?
On this project,
Yeah, what do you think? I'm just curious. In terms
maybe
of-
3 weeks, maybe. Yeah. If that. Yeah.
Yes.
I have a question that may be more general, and maybe it's something for us to discuss further with staff and during the council session, but I wanted to bring it up now and see if it's something that we want to touch on. And that is, I believe this is on a street that Constitution Avenue is slated for the paving project. Is that right?
I'd have to look it up. It's possible.
Okay, and if so, should we work around the schedule if this is approved so that we don't run the trucks after we do the paving?
No, the limited amount of trucks and their damage to the street from one project is relatively insignificant. So I don't think it would be, if we were going to put in new water lines or sewer lines or, a year later or something along those lines, yes, it would be foolish to go ahead and do all this work. But in this particular case, I don't think it's an issue.
But if there's a week or two difference or something like that, we would be happy to work with that.
And if there are any sort of frontage improvements that are going to result with this, we coordinate with that scheduling. We have one on Mays that's going to be happening. So we're coordinating with the contractors so that we don't, have them put things in and then rip it out and all of that. So there'll be a coordinated effort.
Great.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Colson.
You're welcome.
Let me take it now to the council and for discussion. Are there any questions?
There might be more members of the public, perhaps.
Oh, do we have any? I don't think, I didn't get any cards. Anybody else want to speak? No? Okay, so let me take it to the council. Are there any questions or concerns?
Well, it looks like the architect and the city planning commission have worked together on this. You've also looked at it. Looks like a beautiful house that's going to be built in Monte Sereno.
Yeah, I mean, I was also very impressed with the architecture and the site sensitivity and all of that. My main question coming in here was, had the neighbors been talked to, and had we had any communications on either side? It looks like we have had that with the staff, and then we've had the written communication on one of these neighbors that is positive. So, and that's certainly something I want to see in every project. I'd like to see, as much as possible, the neighbors not only being brought into the project, but coming forward and saying that they're very happy with the project, because that's what matters most, I think, on a lot of any question that we're going to be looking at. So I'm happy to see that that's there, and I think it looks like a beautiful project.
Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, I agree. It looks like it's a beautiful project, and it's very well planned. Looking forward to seeing the finished product.
And likewise for me, I think this is very much in line with our setbacks and the trees and the design and even the proposed driveway. So do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Sorry, we do have a resolution for you. So the motion would be motion to approve a resolution of the City Council of the City of Monte Sereno approving a site development permit SS19-02 for the construction of a new 6,493 square foot single-story home, a new 902 square foot detached accessory garage, a fence that exceeds 3 feet within the front setback, and approving a grading use permit GUP 19-01 for grading in excess of 1,000 cubic yards for the property at 18165 Constitution Avenue.
Does anybody want to repeat that?
So moved.
I have a motion. I have a second. Okay, you should be able to vote. Mayor Turner? No voting. Okay. All right, I'm going to take a roll call vote. I have Councilmember Elahi,
Yes.
Councilmember Lawler,
Yes.
Councilmember Luthold,
Yes.
Mayor Turner.
Yes.
It passes 4-0.
Okay. So the next order of business is new business, and we have 3, and we will take them one at a time. So the first one is the little library. The little free library.
Free library. Good evening, Mayor.
Andrea, do you wish to speak?
I do. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Before you is a request from the Youth Commission to place a little free library on city property. This idea came from Youth Commissioner Jesse Liu, who's here tonight, and he's going to explain what a little free library is. But there is one thing that I'd like to clarify or correct since the publishing of the report. it has come to light that the initial location proposed by staff and the Youth Commission, that there may be some ADA challenges. So staff is now recommending an alternate location in which the ADA requirements can be met by the improvements associated with our currently being constructed charging station at the far end of where the old post office used to be. So, staff recommends that the council consider granting approval for placement of the Little Free Library, provided that it meets the necessary ADA requirements at the rear of the City Hall building between the council chamber doors in this corner over here. And yeah, there's
This extra.
there's a handout here that would show the proposed location.
There's yellow right here. There you go.
And there's an arrow that demonstrates where the,
Basically right here in the corner.
and let's see, the other thing that I just wanted to point out is that the Youth Commission did have they chose 3 designs, and they did have a preference for this red choice number 1 design, and that was based on their desire for it to be bright, cheery, and for it to stand out, so people would be able to locate it. And coincidentally, it also matches the trim around the city signs. And I'm here to answer any questions. And Jesse, I think, would like to talk to you more about the Little Free Library. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm Jesse Liu, and I'm a senior at Los Gatos High School. I have a paper presentation. I'll just run through this. So, a Little Free Library is just it's a really simple idea. It's just like a book exchange area, like a public library anybody can take and give books. And on the next one, we're thinking about, as Andrea said, a 2-story library. It's about 2 feet by 2 feet, and the cost will be about $350. And I believe we do have the money to buy that with our budget. And we're thinking about buying it pre-assembled because they can probably assemble better, and that they have the right paint, makes it waterproof, weatherproof, climate-proof. So that's why it's $350. The other price would have been, I think, like $320 if we wanted to buy it not pre-assembled. So we just decided to go with assembled, just probably a little bit more reliable. Just a little bit of background. Started in 2009. It's a 501 nonprofit organization. And what's really cool about this is that there's a world map. So when we buy it from the website, it'll be registered. And so people can, if they're interested in finding a little library near, like their zip code, they can just search it up and it'll pop up on the map. I think I did a little research beforehand. I think we already have 300 zip codes, so that's good. That means people already know about it, or you have people in the community who know about it, so it's not a completely new thing. A little bit more info. 75,000 little free libraries around the world, 85 countries, 50 states, very widespread. Lots of good reviews from journals and newspapers, and it's just very well known, so I think we won't have to really worry about it won't really be like a new thing, like people know it, so it's not going to be like people will adopt it pretty easily. And considerations, so when we first get it, we have to fill it up, and there's like a group of volunteer stewards, or at least that's what the Little Free Library organization calls them, and they basically just like take responsibility of the little library. They like add books to it and just make sure it's clean. So I suppose that the Youth Commission will be that. We'll be the stewards, and the way we'll get books is either we'll give books, we can ask the community for books, or we can go to the library or thrift store or church or any really. I think people are usually pretty willing to donate books. I don't think collecting books would really be a problem. And some possible concerns I can address, inappropriate items. Maybe somebody put, I don't know why anybody would want to, but put some inappropriate book in there. It's no big deal as volunteer stewards. We can just remove it. It's no big deal. And vandalism, same thing. It's going to be, I'll talk about it later, but right here, you see it. Pretty close to the building, if it's well lit, or I think it's close enough to the building that people won't really care to vandalize it. It's not really cool or anything to vandalize. But if it does happen on the rare occasion, we can just paint it over. It's no big deal. And as Andrea said, we're thinking about putting it right here. So instead of in the front, it's in the back, because maybe in the front, people probably won't notice that as much. Kind of blends in with the building. But if it's here, when people enter the building, they could see it. So we think that's a better location. Yeah, it's not that much to it. It's a pretty simple idea. If you are more interested in it, you can visit their website, or if you're really, really interested, you can donate to them. Yeah, that's it. Are there any questions or any more concerns?
Any questions from the council?
Just comment, Youth Commission, first of all, you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.
I think Monte Sereno is lucky to have a youth commission. That's probably the most active youth commission in the county, and this is a good project. I have a neighbor who's put one up in between his house and my house, and he's running out of books, so I have to stack it a little bit. But this would be very convenient, because as people come in, we can all stack books or take books. So,
as the volunteer stewards, we'll also make sure, it's kind of like our duty to make sure that's always stocked. So we'll just be looking for books, yeah. Anything else?
Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Okay, are there no more questions? For sure? Okay. So do we have a motion to approve the Youth Commission's request to place a little free library at the rear and the change of wherever it is of the City Hall Annex building? I can't see anything.
Councilmember Elahi,
Yes?
Councilmember Lawler,
Yes.
Councilmember Luthold,
Yes.
Mayor Turner,
Yes.
4-0. Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Okay, so now let's go to item 9, the Housing Element Annual Progress Report. And Jeannie, do you have a staff report for us?
Yeah, once again, Mayor Turner and council members, my pleasure to be before you, presenting to you our annual Housing Element Progress Report. This is required by the Department of Housing and Community Development for every community to report to them on their progress towards their what's called the Regional Housing Needs Assessment numbers. We're down a little bit from last year, but again, we're pretty consistent with our accessory dwelling units, which, having surveyed them so far, again, most are using them for, extended family, charging no rent, so they do qualify as affordable. There's a new way of tracking all of the housing construction now. If you clicked on the workbook or the worksheets, they're now, instead of just 3 pages, it's like God knows how many tables. Housing and Community Development is now starting to track from beginning to end through entitlement, through building final. So there are 4 potential times in which a home can fall within this report over the course of 3, 4, even 5 years. It's a lot of tables. In our case, for this last year, we did permit 8 accessory dwelling units. And although it's down from 12 last year, again, it's a pretty high number, and it falls within, our target, overall target. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. This is due to the department, HCD, April 1st, and proud to say that Monte Sereno has always been prompt in submitting to that, whereas not all communities are. So, and I see that as reflective of the past councils and their commitment to getting this done.
Are there any questions?
I guess in a nutshell, which housing element are we the furthest away from to meet? I mean, you've got the low income and the multifamily and other stuff. Is there anyone that we need to focus on more?
It's really just continuing to you meet the very low income. When the accessory dwelling units, we're fortunate enough for those to be able to help us in qualifying to meet those affordable units. And I think on table B, it shows you that
Okay, good.
we are, I guess it's the low and the moderate, but we're far ahead of in the very low. So I don't know as though that's too worrisome, and we've already met I think the above moderate, I don't know. So in a few more years, new numbers will be coming out, but right now the ADUs is where our opportunity is to provide for any sort of affordable housing. Just by their nature, they're affordable.
If I could just add, I think from the state's perspective, particularly the low and the very low is what's really important. And as you can see, we're already over the numbers that we required. The most difficult category in all cities to fill is the moderate. And most cities typically aren't able to meet that particular number. But I think as cities in Santa Clara County go in general, because Jeannie and I, of course, attend and talk with other planners all the time, we're actually in very good shape, compared to other cities in the county. I think we're right on target, and we look very good to the other, compared to other cities.
Yeah, this has been a difficult thing for everybody to get through, but just so I know how to read the table. Table B, you have very low income. As I see it, you have a requirement of having 23 units, and you're at 29 already on that.
Correct.
And then the low income, you have a requirement for 13, but we don't have any on that, on the low income one. So low income is defined as what?
There's a whole process of, what the rent would be for a unit, and it changes every year based on.
I think that the low income is 70% of the average median.
It is
50%.
50%. So in our county here, it would be, a studio renting for $1,600 a month, a 1-bedroom for $1,800, and a 2-bedroom for $2,100.
All right. So we're short 13 on that, and the moderate also requires 13, and we're short 12. The above moderate we're fine on, and I don't think that's ever going to be a problem here. But any thoughts on how the low or the moderate is going to be satisfied?
It could very well be, someone who has an ADU that's going to be renting it out.
Okay.
We survey them. The responses that we get is that they're not being charged rent. A lot of people use them for either extended family or, and they're not actually charging rent.
Yeah, I know.
But that's not to say that over time that they are, but, unless we did an annual survey of all the units, then it would be, going up and down. So I think this is kind of the one-time survey to establish what that unit is, and then it holds that label throughout.
Well, at least we've identified what the issues are, so, it can be looked at. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Do we have a motion to accept the Housing Element Annual Progress Report and direct staff to file the report with the state of California by April 1st?
So moved.
I have a motion, I have a second, by Councilmember Lawler. Votes in. Councilmember Elahi?
Yes.
Councilmember Lawler?
Yes.
Councilmember Luthold?
Yes.
Mayor Turner?
Yes.
Okay, so passes 4-0. Thank you.
Okay. So now let's move to item 10, which is filling the vacant city council seat. And Terry, do you want to give us
A
some
staff
guidance?
report. Excuse me. Yes, this item is coming before the city council tonight. We're recommending that the council direct us on how to proceed with filling the recently vacated city council seat. March 8th, 2019, city council member Curtis Rogers officially resigned from the city council. We were waiting to receive that in writing, and we did on that date. And of course, with his resignation, that has created a vacancy. His term was set, that seat's term was set to expire December of 2020. State law requires that the city council move forward with filling the vacancy. The appointment has to be made no later than May the 7th. There's two options, basically. One is to, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say the appointment has to be made by May 7th. There are two options. One is to appoint a person to fill the vacancy. And I've just put some questions out there to get some guidance back from the council on how they'd like to do that if they do choose to go by appointment. And if they do choose to go by appointment, it must be made by May the 7th. The other possibility is that the council could fill the vacancy by electing to call for a special election, which it's outlined in the staff report when that has to be held. And according to the rules and regulations, that would the next regularly established election date would be the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November of each year, which for this year would be November the 5th. So the main difference between the two, of course, is the fiscal impact to the city. If the council decides to move forward with an appointment, there's basically just staff time involved to advertise and to organize the effort. If the city council were to choose to move forward with a special election, we looked at the estimate for the last time we had a vacancy, and which we got from the electors from the register of voters, and it was anywhere between $100,000 to $300,000. So the first question that we have for the city council tonight is, how would you like us to proceed with an appointment or a special election? And particularly if you go with an appointment, we just wanted to get some guidance on how you would like the specific process to be. And the staff has given you some ideas on the procedure, and just want to get some feedback on that.
Okay, so are there any questions about whether we want to appoint or elect?
I guess, any members of the public want to speak at all or not?
Yeah, I mean, do you have any questions about the staff report or any of the specifics? No.
No?
Okay.
Okay. Should we have a motion then to proceed?
You need to open it up for the public comment?
Oh, do we open it up?
Yes, you need
Okay.
to open it for public comment.
Okay, so let me open it up to public comments.
Hi, Susanna Craig, 17526 Violin Avenue. I want to repeat again what I said last time when we had the meeting. Shame on you, all of you, for putting us in a situation to fill a vacancy. So obviously you're not going to select to put our city in debt by $300,000. But again, shame on you for doing this. Hopefully you will appoint someone who will think independently and not be led by somebody who interprets law differently and how it suits them. Thank you.
Do I have anybody else that wishes to speak?
Hi, Brian Mekachuk, 17509 Via Sereno. I think it's pretty obvious that it would be beneficial from a financial standpoint to do this through an appointment, not through a special election. So I would encourage you to do that. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I just wanted to read a statement. Yeah, what happened last week obviously bothered a lot of people. It's bothered me, and I need to get it off my chest. So I drafted a statement which I've handed to everybody, and I would basically like to read that also. And it also has to do with the appointment that's going to be coming up, or which way we should go. Mayor Curtis Rogers resigned at the last meeting, which resignation sent shockwaves to the community and put Monte Sereno on the front pages of the San Jose Mercury News, and subjected the council to criticism and ridicule on social media. As volunteers, the best we can expect is appreciation, and the worst to be voted out of office or recalled by those who elected us. We do not expect to be humiliated out of office by our fellow council members, except if we engage in egregious acts. We certainly do not have an expectation that this would be done because of personal hard feelings packaged in the retroactive application of a resolution. Last week, the City Council removed Mayor Curtis Rogers as mayor and Vice Mayor Rowena Turner as vice mayor. The council members removed Mayor Rogers because, as far as we could tell, he missed 2 meetings, although one was canceled, and he had given notice that he could not be at the second. He did not respond to an email, although the email was sent to the wrong address. He made a remark that was considered disparaging by a council member. He made committee assignments favoring one council member at the expense of others, although it turned out that he really didn't do that, but rather that was an error by a junior clerk who reports not to the mayor but to the city manager, and he failed to inspire his fellow council members. This city council totally ignored the counsel of at least 5 past mayors who had high praise for Curtis Rogers, prominent members of the community, and the many speakers who counseled against doing so. This council knew that Mayor Rogers would not stand the humiliation and resign as a result of his resignation. As a result of his resignation, the council would lose the experience of a council member who had served for 5 years, which is more than the time all the rest of us combined have served. Mayor Curtis Rogers was the chairman of the Silicon Valley Humane Society and was currently serving as the chairman of the West Valley Solid Waste and West Valley Clear Water Program Authority. These chairmanships Monte Sereno does not get often because we're a small city and are lost for the foreseeable future. I, for one, want to put on the record the appreciation and the love the city has shown for Mayor Curtis Rogers, and while he may have felt humiliated, he has no reason to be. He deserves the appreciation of the city for all that he did and was doing for the city. I disagreed with the decision of this council to remove Mayor Curtis Rogers, and I believe that it was a bad decision and has created a horrible precedence. This council also removed Rowena Turner as vice mayor in the same motion. In that sense, it got 2 for the price of 1, but gave no reasons for removing the vice mayor. No one spoke for or against that removal. Even the vice mayor voiced no opposition. We are fortunate that the vice mayor did not feel humiliated and did not resign. By removing the mayor and the vice mayor for the reasons stated and for no reasons at all, because the vice mayor, there was no reason given for her removal, the City Council has done something that was never done before and has also set the bar for removal of a mayor or vice mayor at a ground level. My concern is that moving forward, any council member upset at how he or she has been treated could move to remove the mayor. And whether the motion is carried or not, such a motion would be disruptive and disparaging. I do not look forward to that happening. I do not look forward to a repeat of what happened And I do not look forward to a city council that acts out on how a matter affects them personally rather than how it affects the city council or the city itself. While there are some who are clamoring to recall one or more of them, I think it is in the best interest of the city that all of us as council members actively pursue what we were elected to do, hunker down and serve the city's interest. Each member of this city council has placed on himself or herself an additional challenge. That is to prove to this city that he or she has a desire and passion to serve this city. The city council is blessed with members who are bright, intelligent, and smart, and who volunteer to serve the city council for the benefit of the city. Given their ability on this council, I believe this can be done. And as a city council member, that would be my goal, and I would love to support them in all the things that they do that help the city out. And I know we will be aided in this effort by the excellent staff we have, including the city manager, our excellent legal counsel, and the city clerk. I am blessed to live in the city, and I look forward to working with all of you and with the city council to serve those who elected us. Thank you. And again, as far as whether we should appoint somebody or elect or throw it out for election, I would support having an appointment done to save the money.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. So do we have a motion then to proceed using a nomination? Do we do that first, nomination, and then?
Yeah, so first it would be whether you want to do it by appointment or by election.
Okay.
And then if you determine to do it by appointment, then we'll have some questions.
Okay. So, Kristen, do you want to make the motion?
Sure. So a motion would be for the council to fill the vacancy left by Curtis Rogers by appointment to occur no later than May 7th, 2019.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, so do we now look at a process?
Wait 1 second.
Get your motion approved first.
The second and a vote.
Okay. Voting screen should be up. We have 3 votes in. Councilmember Elahi,
Yes.
Councilmember Lawler,
Yes.
Councilmember Luthold,
Yes.
Mayor Turner.
Yes.
Okay. So it passes 4-0. So in the staff report, we did provide you with a timeline of how we saw the process, and that would be advertising the vacancy tomorrow. And I'm looking at the city clerk because she's the one that has to do that. And we would do that for 30 days. And then the interviews would either be on April 23rd or April 30th. Those would both be special meetings. We did pick those days. They're Tuesday evenings, which we thought might be easier to get all council members present. It is required by the Brown Act that any interviews that you determine to hold would be done in open session, so it would be a meeting like this. And that the appointment could occur either at the special meeting or no later than May 7th. So one question is, are you comfortable with the outline, the timeline, I'm sorry, and then the other is applications. We did include a copy of the application that we use for site and architecture. If that's something that you would be comfortable with, we could convert that to city council. And then also the process for interviews. It may be appropriate to have each candidate do an opening statement, and then you could follow up with asking questions or whatever process the council feels most comfortable with. That is something that has been done in the past.
And regarding the applications, I think prior, the city clerk said that the city council just asked for letters of interest. And I just included the Better Streets Commission application so you'd have some idea of what we do for that group. And if it's something is a little bit more in-depth, like the Site and Architectural Commission, what I'd say, we might not get it out tomorrow. It might be by Friday, because we'd have to make some adjustments and get that, or by Thursday.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, I would think the April 30th date for a meeting would may give you guys some more time and give us some time. You'll be sending us the applications how many days before the actual hearing?
We would get the deadline, well, it'd be well before that, so we could certainly get it out a week in advance. Yeah.
Just depending on when you set your deadline
Yeah.
for the applications or the letters
I
of
mean, we
interest.
send packets out now, it would be by Wednesday for sure, so you'd have at least six days.
And are there any limits to the number of applicants, or would this be?
No.
Okay.
Well, they have to be registered voters of the city.
Qualify, so they have to be registered voters, and they have to be residents of the city. And you all may want to talk to people, talk to friends. In past years, we haven't had a lot of applicants. So anything anybody can do to get the word out.
We just had one, correct?
I don't know. Sometimes we've had as many as 13. It varies. Sometimes we'll have 4.
Okay.
Yeah, just varies.
Sereno's famous now, so we'll have more.
Councilmember Luthold, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. Just to make sure, didn't see anything, but there's no application fee, I assume? Okay. And I would just comment about the interviewing candidates. Maybe we would want to stay dynamic and with the possibility of keeping both days open for interviews if we were to have lots of candidates. If we were to have 10 or 15 candidates, then we might need to spread it out rather than doing it all on one night.
I think we would be lucky if that happened, but yes, you could do that.
It may be easier just to do it on the same night, because it's kind of hard to compare somebody you heard a week earlier and a week later.
I guess that's true. It's the
You
30.
just limit the time you give them, I suppose.
You also have to remember that April 23rd is around Easter break, so you
That's
might
it,
want to
30th.
have 2 dates open for people if they can't make one or the other. Just a suggestion. There is.
I mean, for staff, we just have to also take into consideration, we already have 2 council meetings in April. So adding 2 more meetings would be a Tuesday of every, I mean, granted, you guys have to come as well, but my preference would be if we could stick with one date. And maybe since the 23rd is part of the break, the 30th would be the better date, and I think someone's already suggested that would be a good date. The thing that there's actually a meeting before May the 7th, but it's the day before. So wasn't it that was May the 6th?
May the 7th it is actually.
No, but the council meeting of that week
Is the 7th.
Oh, it is.
It is that day. The concern was because we have 4 of you, and if for some reason you couldn't agree, and if we don't appoint somebody by the 7th, then we have to have an election.
So that's why we didn't wait to the 7th. But I suppose if everything was pretty much locked up on the 30th, but maybe there was something else you wanted to wait another week on, and we could possibly just make the appointment that day, but it would have to occur that day.
So we have to make the appointment at the same time that we interview the applicants, on the same day.
You don't have to. You could interview on the 30th, and then you could make your decision on the 7th. The only concern is if you couldn't agree, because we don't have a tiebreaker with only 4 council members, if you couldn't agree, then, and we went past the 7th, you could no longer appoint, and we would have to have an election. So it's cutting it really close.
So we should try and do it on the same day then.
That's what we would suggest.
If we don't agree on April 30th, then we can say, okay, give us some more candidates by the 7th.
Right.
Okay, so do you want me to take a motion on this process?
Well, why don't we do it in a couple parts? So why don't we see if the 30th of April meets everyone's specifications for the main, hopefully only, meeting?
Okay. So let's look at April 30th.
For me?
It's fine.
Does that work for everyone? Okay.
Okay.
So we'll set the date for the 30th of April. And then regarding the applications, I'm sorry? It'd be 7 o'clock.
So this would be for the interview and the,
Hopefully for the interviews and the decision. And so, so it could, like I said, we've used just letters of interest where people just express in a letter, they can say whatever they want. Or as you could see, we could alter the, and use a similar application as we do in site architecture, and I'm looking at it, and actually could be, I think this might actually work quite well. I'm just reviewing it one more time. I mean, we would take out a few of the questions, like what's your understanding of the city's general plan, and how do you view the Site and Architectural Commission, and those that are specifically to the commission. But there's some in the very beginning, why do you want to be on the council? Tell us about your skills, experience, and interests that you feel would assist us in considering your application. Please list your current commitments. What do you see as important issues in Monte Sereno? And then some of the others wouldn't apply, but we could just keep the ones in that do apply and adjust it to read accordingly. And then indicate that people can submit, additional letters as a letter of interest or any other additional documentation that they would like. Did you want to add something?
I would suggest that if there is a letter of interest, you may want to limit the number of words unless you are in need of reading material, just like they do candidate statements, 200 words, 400
that might
words.
be a good idea.
So they could do a cover letter and also fill out this modified application.
Sure,
Basically, I think that'd be
however you
helpful.
want to do it.
Okay.
That will help us compare, everybody answers those questions, it'll be easier to compare.
So would everyone be okay if we modify this application to be appropriate and then add in a notation for letters of interest are limited to however many words? Andrea,
400 words was a good number.
yeah, for that we limit to the candidate statement. Would that be acceptable?
Which would be 200
So,
words.
so should I take a poll?
I'm just looking for nods.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone seems okay with that? Okay, so we'll modify the application to be appropriate and add letter of interest, 200 words.
Is that the candidate statement limit, the 200 words? Okay. All right.
I won't count them the same way, though.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that depends on
Okay.
the font you use.
The other thing we could do is if there is some concern about not getting through it, is you could begin earlier than 7.
Not a bad idea.
You could start at 6.
I guess we just have to wait and see how many applications we get.
We could, I think, we need direction. Yeah, since it's a special meeting. Maybe why don't we do that when we get closer to the number of applications and we can kind of see. But we have, last year I think we did the goal setting at 5, so it's not uncommon for cities to start a little early depending on what the topic is.
You do have to set the notice out, though.
We do, but that's,
24-hour notice, technically.
Oh, that's all you need
Yeah.
for applications, everybody to show up at the special meeting?
Yeah, it's a special meeting, so it's just 24 hours. We would want to let the applicants
Yeah,
know,
of
but
course.
we could let
Well,
them
you need
know
to let the public know, too, right?
once, yeah.
Public can participate.
yeah, and we want to publish
We should do our
this.
usual notices, though. The same
Yeah,
way.
we do want to publish this if we can the Wednesday prior, just like we do for everything. All right, so I think we've got the application, the meeting date. We'll aim for 7, but if it looks like we have a lot, we'll check in again and may have it earlier. And then, do we need to get direction tonight on the interview process? Yeah, we probably should. So, things it could be, you could have candidates give opening statements, come up, one at a time, and then the council could question. Next applicant, opening statement, council questions. Does that seem like a format that would work for you?
Similar to site and architecture.
I think, yeah, that is kind of what we do for them as well. Would that be appropriate and work for you? Okay, so then we'll sit with interviews, random orders. Kirsten reminds me, yes, random order, opening statement and questions. So then you would proceed through that with each one, and then there would be a period of deliberation, or not really, because you're just. We could just use a similar process for voting that we've used for Youth Commission and Better Streets Commission, and you could tally those on individual ballots. And then Kirsten and I can collect them, tally, and give you the results.
We may want to set up a process involved in the tally related to either tiebreakers, or I think you may have that already about removing names and then voting again, removing the lowest number, voting again, so that we reach a result at the end.
I would suggest open voting. I mean, if we're going to, who are we going to vote for? You're talking about a secret ballot, or you're talking about open voting?
Nothing is secret. So it will all be open. We'll have ballots, then you'll have your name on it. And you can, yeah. And depending on it's possible we could get 4 different first choices. So we'll come up with the best way to weed those out. We've done it a variety of ways over the years. We've done some computer formulas that maybe were a little more complicated than they needed to be. So we'll try to make it as simple as possible.
Okay, I think we have all the direction we need then. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So do we need a motion in this one? No?
No, the main thing
Okay.
we needed was how to proceed with whether it's appointment or election.
Okay. So I guess our next order of business is commission reports. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on the council?
Yes. I don't really have anything to report, other than I had the pleasure of attending the Youth Commission meeting last week and was very impressed with this group of young adults and what they are planning, and I'm looking forward to serving and attending all of their meetings this year. And I attended the Silicon Valley Clean Energy meeting last week. Councilmember Elahi was not available, and I truly enjoyed it. I'm very, very impressed with what they do, and I look forward to attending more of those meetings.
Anybody else? No? Okay, so our next order of business is council member comments. Anybody else? Anybody who wishes to speak? No? Next order of business is city manager's report.
I just have two things, just a reminder to the council and the community. The city council will be holding its goal-setting session for the next fiscal year, which begins July 1st, Saturday, March 30th at 9 o'clock. We will be having coffee, juice, bagels, and other items for the community and for the council. And staff is encouraging any and all to come and let your voices be known. The city's website has announced it, and we've also posted that if folks can't make it, they can provide their ideas, thoughts, and input in advance directly to me, and I will be grouping those and providing them to you prior to the meeting. And I'm working diligently to try to get all the materials out. My aim was for tomorrow, but it might not be till Thursday, so you and the community will see all of the materials for the activity quite in advance of the actual session itself.
Just one thing I wanted to ask, if I may. Sure. The building next door, it can't be used because of an ADA issue. Are we doing anything with trying to get the ADA fixed in there? Otherwise it's just sitting there.
That is true. I'm not sure if all the council is aware, but there was some discussion with the prior council on potential uses. There is a line item in this year's budget that was speaking to the possibility of using it as what we called an annex for the library, because we're part of the Santa Clara County Library. The city put a portion in the budget for the ADA upgrades to make the building usable to the public. At the time, the library was going to provide all the other funds for all the things they were going to do. But through the course of surveying and discussions with the city council, it was decided not to pursue that option. But yes, the answer to the question is, if we were to open that building up for use as permitted under the zoning ordinance, any of those would require funds for us to upgrade the building. The bathroom needs upgrading. It's 2 levels. There's a bit of upgrading that needs to go on the outside. As I have said before to prior council and will repeat tonight, the main issue with that building is the zoning is very limited. It can be only governmental or quasi-governmental agencies. But it does include things like community center type activities. But yes, the intention was, and we can bring that back sometime in the near future, to come back to the city council to talk about, what are your thoughts on how we might be using that. And actually, this is a perfect time because we're moving back and again to making budget allocations. And if you would still like us to pursue some other use that might fit in there, we could reallocate the line item in the budget. So if we did move forward, we'd have it in there to make the ADA upgrades.
It sounds like it doesn't matter what we use it for, the ADA has to be done.
That is true.
So I don't see a reason why we're not doing the ADA, because it's like cart and a horse issue, but you got to get the...
That is true, but what I'd say is it kind of depends on what use you want to use, because the building needs to be reconfigured a little bit. Right. So depending on, what use we move towards might require the upgrades and the changes to be one way versus another.
Would there be a different ADA change?
Well, it could.
The same thing.
Well, for example, I don't know if anyone's ever been in that building, but the staircase from the lower level to the upper level is now kind of in the middle of the overall building. And so if it was going to be used by the library for the purpose they wanted, we needed to move it to one end. So that would be one piece that would kind of depend on the use. And then the bathroom we were going to move completely off to one side because now it kind of cuts the space in half. So it kind of depends. But I'd say if it's any sort of use, really most any use that would be permitted, there are some basics to changing the shape that would fit all of them.
Yeah, so that may be worth taking a look at. Because I mean, even if you can't even put a little library out there, we're really in trouble. We can't even use it for.
Well, that one's going
box.
on the outside.
Now it is, but I'm saying we couldn't even use that.
Well, the ADA requirements for that are actually related to the parking lot.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had to move it over here because there isn't the right ADA access on that over there next to that building.
Okay, thank you.
The only other thing I wanted to mention was, and as you can see, we're having troubles. We finally, after 18 months, have secured someone who can assist us with the final IT upgrades to the council chambers. Just because it was a relatively small job, we were not able to get anyone. But finally, our IT consultant found someone who's going to help us. So it'll appear on the April 2nd agenda. Because it's over a certain amount, it requires the city council to authorize the expenditure of funds. It is already budgeted, but because the contract is over a certain amount, it has to come to the council. And that will finalize getting us a monitor, so we will get rid of this 16, 17-year-old projector, and it will allow us to interconnect the system that displays where we are on the agenda with the laptop that's doing a presentation wirelessly, and I will not have to get up constantly during the meeting and switch all that around. And finally, we will get the installation of the camera in the very back, which will just be pointed straight at this part of the chamber. And so we hope to have that work completed, hopefully by the end of the spring. So I just wanted to mention that was the last piece of those upgrades.
Would that also include upgrades to Granicus, so things will work?
Well, that's really, I'd say there's no upgrading left. It's just, we need to I'm not sure what's going on tonight.
Get rid of it and get a new one?
No, let me confer with the city clerk, because I'm not sure what's going on tonight.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not the IT person, and
Yeah, because we have upgraded it's called the encoder, and it's the best one that they have. So there's something else going on tonight, and I apologize. I'm not sure what it is. It could be related to the fact that keeps going off of the main screen. But if we finish these final upgrades, we should not have any of these issues.
Yes, go ahead.
You mentioned April 2nd, which just reminds me I'm going to be on the plane on April 2nd. I won't be able to attend the meeting on April 2nd. I'm going to Italy for my daughter's wedding.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
Okay. So let's move to future agenda items. Does anybody have future agenda items?
And I don't know if everyone saw my email. I had sent one, I don't know, about a week ago, and I just repeated it again today. I'm still working on a system where I can, keep tallies of what we talk about during this section, and then set up a way that how we're proceeding with whatever it was that you brought up. I just haven't had time to do that for tonight's meeting, but that way you'll be able to know. We heard this from you, and we're either providing a memo, or in the case of where there was one request regarding changing the subdivision regulations related to the scenic corridor, Highway 9, to where all projects have to go to the site and architecture first. That was a clear agenda item that we've already added, and you may have seen from the upcoming. And there was a couple other things talked about. But I'm working on a system. Hopefully it's just a simple spreadsheet, and that way I can send that to you on a regular basis, and you can see, oh, yeah, we talked about this, and this is what's happening, and we talked about that.
That'd be great.
Yeah. I'm hoping to have that by the end of the week.
Okay. Thank you, Terry. Anybody else?
So on future agenda items, have we moved to that? Okay. Yes. On future agenda items, I had one that I wanted to talk about, and whether it should be talked about now or whether it should go over to the goal setting, we can talk about that. And that is to set up some sort of a social media research for putting together a policy of what our social media policy should be, making sure we have clear understanding of what the legal implications are, and then what that policy should be in terms of who can reach out, who can post where, what happens when somebody takes control of an issue on social media. So my recommendation was going to be that we put together probably an ad hoc committee to, if we could have two people from the council interface with the city attorney and then start researching and putting together the outlines of what would be a social media policy.
And I think that's a good idea.
So for a future, I think we'd need an agenda item to form an ad hoc committee, correct?
So we would bring it back to form the committee and to describe the committee's duties, and then the committee would go off, do their research, come back at a future date with recommendations.
So I'd like to see that coming back fairly quickly so that we could choose who's on that committee and get started with it. If for any reason that's more appropriate to have a long, detailed discussion about at the goals and planning session, we could do that. But if not, I'd like to see it come back maybe as early as the next council meeting, just to get it started so we can have the ball rolling.
I don't know if we can make it for the very next meeting, but we can certainly, prioritize it. The goal setting session, this is, I believe this is way too specific. It could, one of the goals is about overall increasing in communication, and this could just be a piece of the objective or, a work item. It could, I assume that that's a goal that's going to remain. My guess is that would be one that's going to remain. So we could just add it to that. But as for setting up the committee, yes, we'll work to get it back to you. I can't guarantee it for the next meeting, but it'll be shortly.
And I'm thinking that it would be something that the committee itself would take most of the laboring oar on.
Yeah.
Would need to interface certainly with city attorney on legal issues related to understanding what these things are, but that the committee could actually do the work. So we wouldn't be creating much more staff work as we prepared the research on this.
Sounds good to me. And I assume this is social media policies. It relates to city council.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is something that's very common in many cities, so there's lots of examples to look at already.
Councilman?
Yeah,
Zandi?
I just want to follow up. I know I've been talking to Terry about it. Mike Frangadakis wants Monte Sereno to be more actively involved with the Veterans Monument. He had presented it to the previous city council, and at that time there was some confusion that whether he was just going to go out and do it on his own. But he wants formal support from the Monte Sereno City Council. He's apparently done a great job with Los Gatos. They've set up a 501c3 foundation, and they're building $1.5 million monument or something. So if we could probably piggyback on that if Los Gatos approves, and that's going to be his job to get their approval, and work together with them where they will recognize that Monte Sereno is also supporting that one, and then the funds could be funneled to that organization and then come back to the city for whoever wants to donate. I don't think it'll cost us, the city itself, anything, but we may need to make a committee that supports him on that. So if you can put that on the May 7th agenda is what I was requesting, but
Right.
whatever.
Are you okay with putting that on the list?
Well,
please?
I was only communicating with Councilmember Lally, but I'll tell everyone. We've been playing phone tag. Originally, he had explained that his organization would lead forward with setting up their own committee to do fundraising and getting outreach. And to be honest, we had contacted him. It's been a number of months ago, and we haven't heard a word from him. But then all of a sudden, he popped up again. So I'm trying to reach him just to be sure it's clear. But it sounds like he may be looking for more assistance from the city than he originally had asked for. But the prior city council fully supported it, and we as staff would support it in any way that we could. So I'm hoping he'll call me back shortly, and I can figure out exactly what it is he needs.
Mayor Pro Tem Lawler?
Yes, I actually, again, this might be something that's for the goal-setting meeting, but I think it'd be wise to look into potentially creating a standing committee to address the housing issues and the legislation that we're facing, a standing committee of citizens to tap into the wealth of intelligence we have in this community that can help us face this difficult issue. So just thought.
I think that's an excellent, sort of drill down from a major topic around housing that I would, encourage the city council to include as part of the goal setting. Because really the idea, it's like the goal itself is You know, for example, we have one on increased communication to the public. If there's one on, related to housing and the city influencing housing policy, then that could just be part of the objectives, and then maybe there's a work item that comes out of that. So keep that thought for that, and we will add that into the overall discussion.
You said you had two?
No, that was it.
Oh, that was it? Okay, so I guess it's my turn. There are a number of state and assembly bills that are coming through that were drafted in December 2018 to February 2019. And most of them have to do with major threats to local zoning authority. And that is SB 50 and the CASA Compact that I had written on Nextdoor about. I think this is worth bringing to the council so we can actually talk about it. We're going to be affected because we are a job-rich housing project. Okay, that means that we have good schools, we are close to jobs, and our median income is higher than any other city around. So this would impact us in our ability to even go against the state to say, no, we don't want ADUs, because they're going to change all the rules about ADUs. So I think this is worth talking about.
Of course it is. And this may be appropriate, for staff to provide a bit more background on the specifics from what's called the CASA Compact and how that affects the city of Monte Sereno. It is something that I do follow closely. There are a number of pieces of it that other communities nearby, especially in the West Valley, will be affected. That won't necessarily affect us, but there are a few that will. So, I think this is a good opportunity for Jeannie and I, because we're, follow this along, for us to provide a bit of an update, maybe in the form of a memo, so that you will have a kind of a better understanding of how this will affect us. In general, the regulations around, regarding ADUs, we're already within in-state compliance for that. And one of the main changes that they might make, which, my opinion as a planner of many years, is not necessarily a bad thing for Monte Sereno, is that it will generally require any property with a single-family home to be allowed to have an ADU. And in general, even our smallest lots in the city are, relatively large as compared to other communities. So, and I'm just giving you some general feedback on a little bit. But I think my point here is that what would be extremely helpful for your understanding is if we could provide you a bit more information on here's what's being proposed, here's the pieces, here how it might affect us as a community, just so you can be a bit more up to speed.
I guess I'm particularly worried about Carl Avenue, right? Because what they can do is give the the developer an incentive to build on Carl Avenue at 85 units per acre, and then the state would actually handle the building of the road. And that wouldn't fall under the developer.
Where's Carl Avenue?
And so I think this is worth talking about to make sure that, we're...
Yeah, none of those regulations will, under the current legislation, the requirements for high-quality transit, there's no place in
It's not transit, though. That is job-rich housing project.
Yeah, I have to get back to you, but I do follow this pretty closely, and as far as I can tell, none of the requirements for increased height or density will affect the city of Monte Sereno. But I will double check, because the legislation has changed a bit. It morphs all the time. I know in other communities around us, it definitely will have an impact. But, my first blush was that it didn't, particularly the ones around heights and density. We did not have any spot within the city that would qualify. But I will double check to be sure.
So I just want to be sure that the urgency of this. The governor will either vote on it or veto it by October 13th. So we don't have a lot of time.
Correct. And we, I may have mentioned this or may not, but this is a topic of discussion at every single monthly meeting for the city managers as well as for the planning officials of the area. and the Cities Association is having a lot of input on this. And there's a lot of good work going, on in the county and more of a regional level to try to address the concerns that communities like ours have. So there is a lot going on, and I apologize, I have to push a little bit more time towards communicating about this to all of you so you can get a little bit more information.
I just don't want to minimize the urgency and the severity of this for Monte Sereno.
Well, I think one thing that we're likely to be asked, I would imagine within the next few months, is the Cities Association and possibly the League will request that cities participate in letters to oppose or support, depending on which one it is. And we haven't been asked yet, but as those come through, that is something we will definitely be pushing forward to the City Council to get your direction
Well,
on.
see, I was brand new on that council just last week, but most of the cities, Los Gatos, Cupertino, Saratoga, have already put in their letters, and we have not. So that's why I'm thinking, we need to work on this really fast.
I wasn't aware that had happened, but I will certainly take a closer look at that.
Okay, thank you.
You mentioned Carl Avenue, that's my street. What do you know about Carl there?
Well,
He's out there.
one of the council members from Los Altos who had lived in Monte Sereno was saying, and she's very well versed on all of this, was saying that we have a piece of property on Carl Avenue with no homes.
Oh, it's a different part. So this isn't on the agenda for tonight, so we really can't talk about it. We will get you some more information, and then we'll bring it back as necessary to address the issue.
Yeah, I guess, if I may, related to this topic about both the state and the assembly bills and these things that are coming up, we obviously have to walk a line between advocacy, although we can advocate for the city once the city forms an opinion and joins in letters and these kinds of things. But I think my concern would be sharing the information with the community as that information comes available. So as you're sharing the information with us, we need to figure out what does affect the city, what doesn't affect the city, and get that information out to the community. We have a lot of smart, motivated people who may be even more politically active than we may be able to be. But I think they're going to want that information, and we need to get that out to everybody.
That's a good point.
Absolutely, and in any memo that we put together, we certainly can post that and push it out and let people know that it's available so they can take a look at it.
Okay. Anybody else on future agenda items? None? So our next meeting is April 2nd at 7 o'clock. If there's no further